Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 297. Today is Sunday the 7th of October 2018, and this interview is with Melanie Notkin. Melanie founded a robust and thriving community called SavvyAuntie. As such, Melanie is a leading voice of a group of women that has $61 billion in buying power. She's the national best-selling author, having penned SavvyAuntie and Otherhood, Modern Women Finding a New Kind of Happiness. She's also a speaker and marketing expert. In this conversation with Melanie, we discuss how she founded and built up the community, her insights and innovations, tips for marketers wanting to build or approach a community. Plus, she's provided us with a scoop. Welcome to the Minter Dialogue podcast, where we discuss branding and all things digital. I am Minter Dial, your host, and you'll find the show notes on my eponymous site, minterdial.com. Enjoy the show. So Melanie Notkin, my friend and fellow L'Oreal ex-employee, fellow Canadian, well, at least I'm not actually Canadian, but I feel it in my bones. It's great to have you on the show, Melanie. Thanks for getting up and joining me.
Minter, you know I'm thrilled to be on this podcast with you, and yes, I have fond memories of the time we spent, minimal unfortunately, but the time we spent together at L'Oreal over a dozen years ago now. Indeed. At this point, for me at least. Gosh.
So in the intervening times, both you and I have gone off and done our own thing, and so the author of two books, SavvyAuntie and Otherhood, and you've founded this wonderful community named essentially SavvyAuntie, and I know you're a master of naming different groups and different thoughts, but tell us more about this SavvyAuntie community that you began and how it all began, really.
Well, you know, I had always expected that I'd get married and have kids and have a great education and a great career. But in my mid-30s, I was single and childless, still am. And I was thinking about, as a marketer by trade, and certainly at L'Oreal, thinking about how we market to women, and realizing that nobody was marketing to me when I became an aunt. Nobody realized that here I was, a woman who was literally flying back and forth to Paris on behalf of L'Oreal, a cosmopolitan New York City woman with discretionary income. And I would, want to give my nephew and then nieces all these wonderful, splendid gifts, and yet I didn't know what they were into. I didn't know what kids were into these days. And here I was, this, like I said, the sophisticated woman, and I knew nothing about the children that meant most to me. Sure, I had maternal instinct, but I didn't have the language. I didn't know what a bugaboo was. It's a stroller, for those here who don't know. And so I thought, here's a market segment that is being ignored, and yet this market segment is among, we know now that I uncovered it, and I named it, coined the term PANK, P like Peter, A-N-K, professional aunt, no kids, this growing trend of women who are having children later, if at all. They are single, married, divorced, separated, they are straight, gay, they are every type of woman in America. And yet, this growing cohort is being ignored. And I thought, this is an opportunity to say, it's not just moms that love children, and it's not just moms who should be marketed to with general things from Tropicana orange juice to Tide laundry detergent. And with that, I coined the term to identify the opportunity, the PANK, and at the same time, simultaneously, I launched SavvyAuntie in the summer of 2008. I can't believe it's 10 years. To show the solution to this, to find a solution, to offer a solution to this market gap. The literally, I launched at 1 p.m. on June 9th, July 9th, 2008, and at 1:23 p.m., I got an email from the then agency representing Hasbro and Play School.
Wow.
And just a couple hours later, about 3:15, I got an email from Sephora. And so I knew, right, I mean, of course, those were the longest 2 hours of my life. But essentially, I knew right away that, yes, marketers understood that these women are spending on the children they love as well as on themselves, beauty, and of course it went on to other general products that adults purchase.
So from a marketing standpoint, I'm dying to know, how on earth did you manage to spike Sephora and Hasbro's drinks to call you? I mean, that is, any marketer's dream to be able to get them on your radar, or is it credit to them for being very sensitive and looking at what's happening?
Well, and I should mention also that Disney, it took them 2 days. I heard from them on Friday. Before I launched, and again, this is 2000, I had the idea in 2007, launched in 2008. I was doing the then nascent social media circuit and going to these Twitter breakfasts and Facebook lunches and networking, and and I got Mashable to mention the launch, and I got TechCrunch to mention the launch, and the Washington Post picked it up, and also this is what we call the pre-Oprah or pre-Ashton Kutcher days on Twitter. The day I launched, SavvyAuntie was the most tweeted word on Twitter. Again, much smaller community 10 years ago, but I had spent the better part of the year before launch telling people my story, what I was doing, and I think again, because Twitter was a smaller community, I was finding a community of other entrepreneurial people who were rooting for me and rooting for this to work. And I think all of that together, so that sort of the preamble to the launch is what helped with the amazing press and support. And then, of course, there's, what was sort of called by some marketers is this sort of the obvious Adam, well, of course, well, that's my sister, or that's my best friend, or, wow, I remember my aunt used to buy me everything, and so it was great. It was right in front of us this whole time. So I think all of that together, and I actually invested a lot in the website. It was, in fact, then Webby Award nominated for Best Family/Parenting Site. I lost proudly to Disney's Family.com, but the idea was that I wanted not just to launch something that looked like I was timid or unsure. Should I do it? It is and was professional, and so it just attracted a sophisticated marketer.
All right, so give us an idea now, Melanie. We're 2018. What type of community do you have, and where are they? Because I know you have your forum, the Facebook page, and I want to get into how you manage that.
So, as we all know, 10 years ago, you had to have a URL, a www.something, to drive people to. And now we know that you have to go to them, and they are generally, the communities are often on platforms like Facebook. And so I have actually focused more of my efforts on Facebook, and there are over 100,000 of these SavvyAunties on the Facebook page at facebook.com/SavvyAuntie, and then a smaller, more intimate group in a private, closed group called SavvyAuntie, the group on Facebook, where they can talk about the things that they may not want to talk about publicly. Sometimes it's just because they want to share photos of their nieces and nephews at their graduation, or their first tooth, or their sleepover with Auntie. Or sometimes it's because they have an issue, a challenge with their sister who said something to them that was insensitive and they wanted advice, etc. So on the page, where there are, again, over 100,000, these women are very engaged because nobody has asked them the questions or has engaged them in the type of content that I do. So, for instance, generally I ask what I call anti-up question, AUNTIE. I'm very big. You mentioned the nomenclature at the top. I'm very big into these anti-isms. Mm-hmm. So anti-up, and often they're open-ended questions. I think yesterday was something like, anti-up, what is the thing your nieces and nephews, my nieces and nephews come to me when they need, and blank, and the answers are when they need money, when they need someone to talk to about, XYZ, when they need toys, when they need a hug, when they need to tell a secret. So they are so excited that somebody even cares enough to recognize who they are as women and their important role as aunts. So they are engaging not only with the posts and the content, but with each other, and sharing this content with each other. So, and as far as where they are geographically, they're across the United States. It's not just the big cities. They are literally everywhere. And sometimes it's relative to the city. So in New York, it's not so strange if a woman is 30 and single, but perhaps in a smaller city in the middle of the country, it is much more of a significant challenge for that woman if she wants to be married and or if she wants children. And by the way, this group, the PANC, is not just women who want children. It's, of course, women who are child-free by choice, women who can no longer have children, women who could never have children. It's all women who the thing that they have in common is that they love the children in their life. And again, another caveat, it's not just their blood relatives, their nieces and nephews via their siblings. But as we know, many people have children in their lives from their college roommate, 10, 20, 30 years later, from their best friend at work, whomever. So it's about the children in their life.
I can imagine that everyone, as you say, has different ways in, and I know for the article that you published in Colette, excuse me, that you have a very much more, there's a sort of a sadness to the angle that you have, but you must be faced with so many. One of the issues or the thoughts that I have is how do you participate in them, and is it a question of some subgroups forming around different gangs, so to speak, or angles in, and then how do you evaluate the engagement? Is there a metric or something you're looking at from a typical marketer, that you're looking at how your posts are stimulating the conversation in your group?
So you're right, I do come to this as one who is childless by circumstance. I remained single and chose to wait for the man I love, who has apparently been busy with other things. And there was grief and there was sadness around it. I'm now 49, and I am and have always been a pretty happy woman, and I am today. I have no regrets. It's more that there is it's really about the idea that as if a single woman is not in pain when a woman who's married or coupled trying to have a baby, she is due the pain of infertility, when one who is infertile by circumstance is not due that grief. So that's one of the issues that I try to bring up, and that is, you mentioned Otherhood at the top of the conversation. That's what my memoir Otherhood, Modern Women Finding a New Kind of Happiness, is about. That experience of women who expected love, marriage, and motherhood, and yet remain single. and childless. So, and in terms of the sort of the sub cohorts within this larger tribe, yes, in the closed Facebook group, those women have conversations together and share their thoughts together, and or because again these women have they come to the group with it's a very positive thing, right? It's love for children, and so they already come to the group. They don't come to the group in sort of this this victim way or antagonizing way or any of that. It's really, as one who doesn't want children and respects the fact that you do. The issue for me is that when people say, well, you'll change your mind one day, I'm just fed up with that kind of response. And the women from all cohorts or the women specifically in that cohort will offer their opinion and their thoughts, or even just their support. And in terms of, measuring engagement, frankly, for me, it doesn't matter as long as they're engaging. For me, it is, well, okay, that question didn't work today. It's not the end of the world. Let's try something else. Sometimes, frankly, it's because Facebook has its own magic sauce to its algorithm, and you don't know if it's something you asked or pondered, or for whatever reason, there were other things that kept their news feeds busy that day. Really, it's when I work with other marketers, my clients, who want to engage with these women. And it's my job, having done this for a decade, to help them frame the messaging that around their own key messages so that it is something that the SavvyAunties are more attuned to. I did a national research study on the PANK in the late spring, which is coming out soon. Very excited.
Watch this space.
Yes. One of the things that we saw was that, in fact, women, to a quite large degree, basically like 4 out of 5 are very interested in having marketers recognize their role as an aunt in how they market to them, certainly with juvenile products. So they're, and I tried and coached my clients to recognize that, if nobody ever calls your name, and actually, depending on their age, I don't know if you had this when you were growing up, but there was a show in Canada and the U.S. called Romper Room, and at the end of Romper Room, it was sort of like a little preschool setting, and the teacher would name names of children, right? But sort of randomly, and every child, including me, would sit by the TV waiting, hoping he'd say Melanie, and she did once, she did. Mm-hmm. And so, I try and say, when they hear their name, not literally, but the role of aunt from a big brand, whether it's, I remember when I was doing announcing a deal on Twitter a few years ago with Tropicana, and I tweeted out something like, because Tropicana values the role of the aunt in the family village, because the campaign itself was family related. The immediate response was, I always knew that orange juice tasted better, from these aunts, and it was sort of a wink, and but it was the idea that any brand that recognizes them, they will open their ears and eyes to. It doesn't mean that they will automatically buy the product, become loyal customers, but at least they're listening. And then it's really, at that point, up to the brand to, I can get, what do they say? You can bring the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So,
sure.
So, yeah.
So I'm guessing then that maybe this was a sponsored tweet from Tropicana. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So you're, with your marketing background and then working with customers, you're sort of the interlay between the brand and making them figure out the right tonality to reach your audience. What might be some of the biggest learnings that you've had that, let's say going forward for marketers, whatever community they're going after, what kind of advice would you have for marketers?
Well, people, marketers, even with the research and insights and data that I've shared over the years, they still, for some reason, still seem to have a blind spot for this woman. Now, she is, here's who the pank is, I'll share some of the fresh new insights with your listening audience that I've yet to reveal publicly. But so here we are. We know that there are approximately 20 to 23 million panks in the U.S. That's women 18 plus who have a child in their life and don't have a child of their own. We know that these women are twice as likely to have a college degree as the average adult American, 3 times as likely to have an advanced degree. We know, and this is fascinating, that 7% of panks are in the top 1% of all female income earners and top 2% overall. So when we talk about that 1%, the 1%ers,
they over-index.
So, yes, they really over-index, and we also know that 91% of them said that they value the way that they value their role as an aunt is very important, and then another 7% is important. So when these women are really indexing high on the value of the role that they play in the family and the family village, they want to be heard, and yet they still go ignored. And we'll see what happens this year. But as the holiday season approaches, we will likely see a lot of ads aimed at parents that aunts won't see. Because they're either if they're commercials, they're on children's programming, and unless the aunt is there with the child at that moment, which isn't as often as mom or dad, they're not going to see it. Or they're in parenting magazines or on parenting sites, and they're not reaching this cohort unless they're working with me. And so I think what marketers need to consider, if they want this cohort of women who, by the way, and this is a big wow, is that on toys and games and entertainment like concerts and plays and events, and on apparel and accessories and shoes and electronics, birthdays, holiday gifts, travel with their nieces and nephews, not even to them, this is just with them. These women are spending $61 billion a year on children they love. Including Taylor Swift concerts. Exactly. Which is half. That's probably half. And that does not, what it does not include is the 2/3 who contribute to a child's education every year. Wow. And whether that's through a college savings plan or through a tutor or through, the books that they need. And it doesn't include the less frequent non-annual gifts like a newborn baby gift, which is about $232 a year that they spend. And then there are those one-time big ticket items, whether it is, the trip to Europe that they may take them on, or the car that they buy them, because some of these aunts do that. It's on average $1,500 a year that these aunts spend. So that $61 billion doesn't even account for the less frequent occasion and big ticket items.
All right, so the lesson for marketers is, once you've figured out the community or the group that you want to go after, you better know where they are and start playing to them in their space, because they're not watching, for example, kids programs because they don't have kids.
Right, exactly, and to talk to them, and also to not talk about, don't market to moms, market to women, unless it is something that is specific only to mothers, like breast pumps. She probably doesn't need to know about.
For sure.
Even there was a time even designer diapers, and I was like, well, the aunt's going to buy the designer diapers, like they were like camouflage and sort of faux denim looks, and the aunt's going to buy those diapers when she goes to pick up 24 diapers for her sister.
Well, I guess the question is how to get that message out. So from another angle, as you're managing this community, are you and how do you try to grow the base of your SavvyAunties?
First of all, I just want to say that marketers can come to me and I can help them parse out through the insights of how to talk to those women, and then certainly through my platforms can help them reach these women, and through their platforms help them. Growing the base is now something that the aunts themselves are helping me with, in that I create content, whether it's usually it's image style content, the posters that people love to share on Facebook and Instagram, and or comment on them, engage in them in some way. So they are helping me with that, which is fantastic. I grow it through paid social advertising, which again, frankly, it's remarkable because these aunts are so used to not being spoken to or with, that the minute that they see their name they respond. It's really remarkable, the engagement on social ads. And then, I'm always engaging with them myself so that they know that there is a sort of a leader to this tribe. And I get, I answer their emails. I mean, I'm engaging with them myself. And so they, in return, they know that I'm self-funded. They know that this is something that I've, done on my own, because I share that with them, so that they understand how authentic this is to me and to them. And so they are so grateful that someone has recognized their worth and their value and their identity, and the children in their life and that special relationship. And so they support the platform, and they support the business, which is fantastic. And then on top of that, they tend to support the sponsors that work with me, because they feel that they are sponsoring them, in that while they don't get any monetary feedback from them, they get the recognition, and they show gratitude for it, which is extraordinary.
So on a regular basis, Melanie, or at least they know that you are not out to do this to monetize them. There's always this sort of, if it's free, then you are the media.
Well, the truth is they know that that revenue comes from their engagement with sponsors, and or if they buy a book, or if they buy a T-shirt, or whatever. They understand that.
Yeah, it's an affiliate.
But they're happy to do it. I mean, this is the type of thing where, well, sure, if you were, I've literally had women say, who are the sponsors? Because I'm going to choose them first, which is extraordinary. So I don't think that they, I've in this decade, I've had very little negative feedback in terms of anybody feeling like they've been used. And there's only so much you can do, i.e., you have to make money. Right. And I don't think that they've ever felt like I've taken advantage of them. And I certainly do my very best. And I would never work with a sponsor that I felt was not ethical or trustworthy. Yeah, so
at some level, it's a combination of your integrity, being transparent, and providing value, and then they're happy to pay back, per se.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what platforms should be doing.
Yeah, sure. Exactly. That's a good lesson. So I was wondering, as you manage let's say you're the community manager at large, one of the challenges that I can imagine is that the conversation with so many people, as we know on the internet, can go all over the place. Is it a question of herding cats? Do you have within your community moderators that help you out, your advocates who are parsing and helping to keep the conversation where it should be? Or is that sort of not a problem, and you're lucky you've got a great, pure community?
It's, for the most part, it is a great, pure community. It's fantastic. On the page, there's very rarely any trolling, any negativity. It's really, frankly, wonderful. In the more intimate group, there are certainly those who will report something if they felt that someone was sharing something that probably didn't belong in the group. If someone was what's wonderful is, there was somebody in the group who was leveraging the audience, or the members of the group rather, to promote her own. She has an aunt blog, and I could sort of tell from the way she was asking questions there that it sounded a little too as if she was her, as her group, right? And they reported it to me right away. Oh, she sent me an email, and so they took care of it, which was extraordinary. They will say, Melanie, we know how hard you worked to put this together, and we're grateful. So yeah, with that, I'm so grateful to that. I'm grateful that I've built a community that respect me enough to take it personally should anyone not be honest and true blue within the group.
But I can imagine there are times where you see something and it makes you aghast or surprises you in somewhat of a negative way, because things come out on words and you don't necessarily read them in the way they were intended, and that just sort of happens. And do you feel like sometimes you have to sort of take a breath and let the community manage it? Or there must be like this visceral experience for you because you're so near to it, you are it.
Well, what's wonderful is that I get to now see the conversations that I imagined women might be having together. I call it the tribe of a group of aunts that are friends. I call it their entourage, AUNT. And
nice.
So it's very rare that I'm able to actually listen into the conversations, but here I am able to do that. And these are adults, they're having wonderful conversations. It's very rare that, like I said, that there's any negativity. And when there is, if I haven't even seen it yet, because I can't be everywhere at once, they take care of it. They said, well, what you said to her might have been a little bit harsh, and we know you didn't mean it that way, and they manage it. So, no, I'm so fortunate that it has become really a very happy place for these women to go. And again, because there's so many mom groups and forums and parenting groups and forums, etc. One of the reasons why I created SavvyAuntie was because we don't have the park, the sandbox area where like moms and dads do to share their pride and their concerns and ask for advice, etc. And so they're just so happy to have this spot that they become very loyal to it and don't want anybody or anything to sully it.
Well, Melanie, you must be very proud of your Otherhood. and I enjoy listening to your the way you've expressed this, and it seems really wonderful. So how can any panks or aunties, where would you let them know the easiest place, where the most interesting places to go are? And then also, how can any marketers who are interested in working with you, with this community, how can they get in touch with you or follow you?
Thank you very, very much. So, and thank you for recognizing this cohort as an important market in the group of niche markets that marketers should consider.
Well, let me just jump in, Melanie, 1 second, and say, when we were working at L'Oreal, we would talk about women who are buying products. They buy products for themselves. They're also buying so many of the products for their men. When it comes to cars, we all think it's about men who are buying cars, but not at all. the buck tends to stop with a woman who looks at the practical matters, as we know. And so let's say that the women market is much bigger as a vast market. And then within that, it's not such a small niche. It seems like it's a very powerful niche. So I wanted to ante up on that one. So continue on.
And thank you. And it is a powerful niche. Nearly 50% of American women don't have children. The majority go on to have children, but it is much... We are no longer having children by age 23. In fact, for the first time, more women are entering their 30s without having had a child. 54% of women ages 25 to 29 are childless.
And that time in between is really valuable, because even though I might be 30, up to 30, I'm seeing my sister with girls or children, and I have a relationship with them. I know one day I'll get married, but even now, that relationship as auntie is valuable and is worthwhile and is totally relevant.
Exactly. And, marketers and media and family members should recognize the value that she adds. And by the way, there's no legal obligation to Aunt. She doesn't have to do any of this. All of it is out of her kindness and generosity. And that's really remarkable about this cohort. And they, the Panks, can find me. I'm SavvyAuntie on all platforms. And if I may, I'll spell that out, because sometimes people don't know how I spell auntie. So it's SavvyAuntie on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course SavvyAuntie.com. And any marketers who are interested in learning more and or coming in touch with me directly can reach me at Melanie@SavvyAuntie.com.
Spectacular. Melanie, thanks for coming on the show. Lovely to have you on again, or at least have an excuse to hang out with you, and have a lovely day.
Oh, you too, Minter. Thank you so very much. This is great.
Thanks for having listened to this recording of the Minter Dialogue Show. You'll find the show notes and other blog posts on minterdial.com. If you enjoyed the show, please like the handy Facebook button, or better yet, head over to iTunes to give a rating and review. But first, relax to Josh Sachs's Finger Paint.
Oh, fill me with all your colors, any different way to rid me of the gray and heal me with all your imperfections that you mention in your lack of self-security. Oh, I wouldn't care about the art form as long as you would feel warm, wrapped in canvas. Hold me tightly, slowly we would paint a lover's portrait with all your favorite shades, and we'd paint it with our fingers to show the world the way we feel. Oh, the way we feel. Oh, so messy. The ridges in our palms make colors blend and look ugly in the end, but they're pretty in their own disgusting values. We'd hang our portraits in the hallways, make our house guests cringe. Oh, I wouldn't care about the art form as long as you would feel warm, seeing all your colors on the canvas as we paint a lover's portrait with all your favorite shades, and we paint it with our fingers to show the world the way we feel. share.